Hello, welcome. Thanks for coming to Connecting Community Mid-COVID. I'm Heather Lazikis from Seven Roots, and my coworker, Joel Kapishki, is joining us today. Seven Roots, we are a worker co-op, we work as a team. So the thought of solo presenting to you all didn't seem like it would be the best experience for any of us. So Joel and I are going to kind of tag team, have a little conversation, and hopefully that's a nice way to kind of run through this information.
This is not all you get to see of Heather Lazikis. Next up, 1 o'clock today, is building a detailed plan for owner growth.
That's right. Thank you, Joel. That is a nice little intro. I believe we're on Central Time, but double check your calendar. So it'll actually be 15 minutes after this session ends. So you can just kind of grab a snack, hit the restroom, fill up your water, and come right back, and we can keep on trucking. But we'll be live and in person at that point, which will be fun. So basically, we're going to walk through a tool of XDIs and sort of build on things to, that you can take action on over the course of the year. So you can walk away from this conference with like a plan. So, all right. Today, we are going to talk about a couple things. So we're talking about how to reconnect with your communities. And the first thing we're going to go over is the goal. So we're reconnecting. Why? So we're going to talk a bit about, what are our goals as startup co-ops in what we're doing right now, outreach methods, what we've done, what we can do now, how to strategize, and then some specific ideas to kind of get you rolling.
Goals of startup outreach. So the primary goal is to entice community members to join the co-op.
Yep, you got it. And that's the thing is, it's really easy once we have an audience and we're kind of moving to think like, well, we got to have, some more things to talk about here. Or, to say we could do so much good now that we have some weight behind us, some people behind us. But don't get sidetracked. Your goal is to open a grocery store. So unless you're making an intentional or a strategic choice to do something different, you want to invest in the things that are going to draw a straight line to owner growth, but nothing else. So that's key to keep in mind as you're thinking about, hey, where should we put our limited energy? You're a volunteer-led organization. Everyone is giving of their free time. And so it's important to be mindful of that and be very strategic about your choices for what you're doing as you go along, because startup burnout is a thing. You may have experienced it.
or maybe read about it. So where does the money piece come in with this?
Oh, sure. Right. And I think it's the same. That's a great point, Joel. It's the same principle. So you don't want to invest in things unless they're going to entice people to join your co-op. So we'll talk a little bit about how that extrapolates out, because there are sort of some sub goals that help you to get there. But that's key is, stay focused on the goal, eyes on the prize, right? Does that answer your question, Joel?
Yes, thank you.
Cool, thanks.
So we've got our primary goals worked out. We also have some secondary goals, creating awareness and building connections.
Creating awareness and building connections, they bring you to the primary goal. That's why they're goals, right? In and of themselves, if they weren't getting you to the primary goal of getting people to join the store or getting people to join your co-op, then they might not matter, right? But that's what we're working towards. So thinking about creating awareness, you want to let people know. It's really as simple as that. Let people know that you exist. It's tough, right? Because the co-op is such a key part of your life, right? If you are sitting in your house right now at your computer watching a virtual conference about co-ops, we know that you are in deep, right? And so it's hard to imagine, and you know that you're reaching out in this way and that way, and all these different initiatives that the co-op is planning. And so it's hard to imagine that people might not even know that the co-op is out there, but they're out there. There are lots of them, and our job is to just kind of like keep hitting them, and try all different avenues to catch people, and let them know who you are and what you're doing and why they should be a part of it. And building connections is a good way to do that, right? So building connections is a way to create awareness, and it's also just powerful in and of itself as a sort of persuasive method, right? So, oh, I've built a connection to Joel. Well, I might not know people that Joel knows, but they know him, so maybe they're more interested in me, right? And it works the same way with the co-op. It's simple, but it's easy to forget sometimes that's a key piece. And you can be building connections between people. You can be building connections between the co-op and other businesses or organizations. So that's kind of like a broad way to think about it when you're trying to pass something through a filter and say, hey, is this a good activity for us? You can say, does this create awareness? Does this build connections?
Great. I have one question on the creating awareness. Are we talking creating awareness of, hey, this co-op exists? Are we talking next level awareness of why this co-op is going to be awesome and what difference it's going to make in my life and
Right.
in our community?
Yeah, that's a great point, Joel. You kind of have to do both, right? Because just the fact that it exists isn't good enough. So, I mean, that's a good start, right? Because if you're starting at zero, existence helps, right? But you're right. We do need to then, beyond that, be conveying in a very simple way why that's going to help folks, and appealing to them in a way that sort of meets them where they're at, finds them, um, finds something that they're interested in, and can connect there.
So, how have we done it? Well, typically lots of events. What kind of events?
So there's a whole suite of things. We've really depended on personal connection and doing things, up front, face to face. So kind of local or municipal events. So thinking about, stuff for the village or the city, farmers markets, street fairs, parties, fundraisers, collaborations, information sessions. So things that we're hosting on our own, and then going out to other groups and speaking to them. So homeowners associations is the example we're using here, but that's true of, if you were going to your local Kiwanis club, or things of that nature, maybe Boy Scout troops, whatever you've got, right? We were going out to other people and making connections. Other things that we've had in our repertoire in terms of how we're reaching people: educational events, and then going online, having your website up and running with the information you need, being on social media, doing personal networking, and then also press coverage. So that can happen in a variety of ways. So these are the sorts of tools that we've been using over the years. And, if you're working with Food Co-op Initiative and you're talking with your peers, your fellow startups, these are the types of things that we've all said, yep, this is the plan. This, just keep moving through them, find the ones that work best for you, and keep hammering at it. Well,
Great. And nothing has happened in our world to change that approach at all.
right.
Oh,
Wait.
Right.
Yeah. So this picture became not that weird last year. And so that it sort of inspired a bit of a change in approach. Suddenly, a number of these things became not options for us. And they were the things that we were relying on really heavily. So we see here that lots of those things went out of the equation. But I think what we also see here is that many of them are still there. Many of them are still possible. So that's sort of where we are now. And what we're going to talk about today is that, maybe some of these things are coming back into favor. But mostly it's been a bit of a roller coaster, right? So when things started out, everyone was watching the news. Then everyone was on social media and Zoom. Then no one wanted to be online because they spend all their time online. And now, where are we now, right? Startups have been nimble. You've all kind of gone out and said, like, all right, how can we make this work? We're going to do this online event. We're going to run this initiative. But this has thrown us off kilter because, like all organizations, you've had to sort of roll with the punches and, kind of take the waves as they come. And again, you're volunteers and you can only spend so much time strategizing, right? So we're going to talk a little bit today about how to approach thinking about being connected to your community and some ways that you can go out and do it, some easy go-tos and strategies for thinking about it.
Right. So now what?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So don't stop, get moving, plan for what you know, tap into the mood of your community because every community is different. So don't stop, get moving. What does that mean?
Yeah. Well, what it means is don't get tired now. So you've pivoted, right? And you've probably done stuff that was a huge success that would have never worked before COVID. And you've probably done stuff that totally bombed. And it's a huge bummer when you're putting energy and effort and resources into things and then they just don't work. Now you gotta just keep going. And in fact, it's a pretty critical time because people are waking up. They're out there. You're probably seeing it in your own communities that everybody's kind of like looking up and seeing who's still around, what's going on, right? We've been in this weird world and it's still weird, but but there's some space and we're all getting like some little senses of normalcy are returning. And so now they're ready for you. I should clarify, when we say get out there, we don't necessarily mean physically, right? There are many ways that we can do this. And I think what we're thinking is that, some folks have been sort of holding back, like, hey, this just isn't right for where we are right now, right? Our people aren't ready to hear from the co-op. The co-op isn't relevant in the middle of a pandemic. And now the point is like, that's not true. Get out there now, right? And that's in your messaging. It might be online, it might be in person, but we're going to talk a bit about that. So yeah, plan for what you know now, meaning everything's changing all the time. What is socially acceptable today will change. And what is recommended by health authorities will also change. And that's frustrating, but we all got to work with it, right? So as you make plans to do things, keep it flexible, right? For anything that you're planning into the future, just stay, sort of flexible with it. Make a couple loose plans and plan to sort of tighten things up as you get closer. And then plan to be the safest possible presentation that you can provide to people. So, while safety isn't the selling point that it was, no contact is something we're hearing less now. It's still sort of expected. It's moved beyond like a feature to sort of, oh yes, this is, an expected behavior. And so it's important and respectful to be safe if you're going to be doing things in person or asking people to interact in some way.
And this is all going to depend on the mood of your community. So, you know,
Hmm.
Heather is in upstate New York. I'm in Milwaukee. Where you are, the mood is going to be different. You're going to have to keep your finger on the pulse there.
What are people doing? What are people comfortable with? I've been in large cities where everyone's masked up every time they leave the house. And, where I'm living, folks are just kind of like staying away from each other. Masks are are a sometimes outside, depending on whether or not you're close to other people, right? So you need to think about what's socially acceptable and also what's going to be effective. So beyond the appearance, again, going back to it, you only want to spend your resources on something that's going to be effective at helping you to achieve your goals. So if you know, hey, no one's doing in-person events, don't do any, right? If you know everyone's super sick of Zoom, we can't possibly do another Zoom thing in our city, don't do it, right? And in the same vein, look to what other people are doing successfully and say, hey, how can we do something like that? Or better yet, how can we just be a part of the thing that somebody else is already planning?
Right. And we actually heard this from startup co-ops over the last year, where some were like, nobody wants to talk co-op right now. Everyone's focused on other stuff. We kind of thought, okay, yeah, that totally makes sense. But there were a few co-ops that we heard from who are like, oh no, everyone's stuck at home. They're like, oh, we can talk about the co-op. That's something we can still do while we're stuck at home. And so some co-ops actually in their community were able to kind of make some forward progress during COVID. And some very much felt like, oh no, the mood just totally shut down. Everyone was focused on other stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
it's up to you to see if you can kind of goose that, hey, we're ready to do this again, while taking the pulse of what's going on in your particular community.
Now we're talking about how to do it.
This is stuff that we can do before everyone's ready to hang out, have those great dinner parties where we used to get a bunch of friends together, talk about the co-op. Well, this is stuff we can do until the time we're ready to do that again. So social media, email, lawn signs, direct mail. Give us some more of the details on this, Heather.
All right. So social media and email newsletters, I mean, it almost feels silly to say it, but they're must do's, right? You're probably already doing them. Just make sure that you're doing them. Make sure that you're doing them. You're doing them regularly, and be sure that your content is quality. So for both of these, I always say that you need to be relevant, interesting, and consistent. You do not need to post multiple times daily, right? Because at a certain point you're going to run out of things that are interesting to say, and you'll be posting for the sake of posting. Don't do that, right? Because we all know what happens if you see something that comes through your feed all day long. You kind of turn them off. So you don't want to turn into wallpaper, but you do want to consistently be putting up progress, testimonials, pictures, inspirational photos. I mean, the list goes on of things that you can use. Be sure that they're relevant. Email newsletter, it's, similar. You just want to keep in touch with the people who are already on your list, right? You're on their radar. Just keep them hooked in, make sure they know, and wherever you can, try to engage them with that. Those are both easy, they're free, and in email and on social media, they're places that people already are. You don't have to get them to do a thing. You're just sliding right into this place that they have that they are accessing. Don't miss out on that.
As I think about this, would it make sense to like build a calendar so we kind of have a plan for how often we're going to post? And so then when we see something, we're like, oh, this will be great. I don't have to worry about posting it immediately. We do posts Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or whatever, and I can put it in my resource pile for the next time we post. To me, that feels like I'm taking this amorphous idea of staying in contact online and saying, I don't have to think about it all the time. We're going to build a consistent, doable plan. And maybe if something big happens, we can do a, hey, here's a bonus post or a bonus email. But then we're not constantly scrambling. We've got a plan about when we're going to communicate through these different media.
The answer to your question is absolutely. In marketing world, that's called a communications calendar, or in the publication world, an editorial calendar. It's a similar type of thing. And yeah, making those decisions in advance of when they need to happen is going to yield higher quality content because you're not scrambling. You're just doing something that you knew you were going to do, that you've thought about, that you've planned for. Having that and knowing who's going to do these things, probably sharing that burden is the best possible way to be doing it. Volunteer hours are hard to come by, but you might be able to get some folks who are content creators, marketers, things like that, who can help you with these things. And teaming up is always a better way to be doing it from a quality perspective and from a morale perspective. It's just more fun to work on stuff when you've got a buddy. Thank you for asking that. That's a great one. So lawn signs, it's an easy one. Lots of folks are doing it. It's lawn sign season, right? If you are in an area that has had inclement weather for the last, 4, 6, 8 months, whatever, it is now time to bring the lawn signs back out. So whether you've had them in the past, whether you haven't had them in the past, this is a great time to be doing it, right? Everyone's kind of getting outside. They've got sort of spring fever. They're around in the neighborhoods and they'll see the signs. If you're going to distribute lawn signs, you could do a blitz. So you might have seen other people who do this. They will like pile all the lawn signs into someone's yard and say, hey, owners, come pick up your lawn sign, whatnot. So again, it's not in your face. You don't have to go and talk to someone and hand things off, because while we're reemerging into the world, everyone's a little bit different. Every community is a little bit different about what feels comfortable. You can arrange for easy pickup. The other thing is that you can do with lawn signs in terms of distribution is just have someone drive them around and stick them in lawns. Have people volunteer, say, hey, come put one at my house. And then you get someone who wants to get out of the house on a Saturday afternoon and they're just like plugging them in all over town.
People's lawns who asked for them, not just.
Yes, to be clear, you should keep it with folks who are looking for them. Yeah, that's a great point. One thing I always say, you might have heard me say this before if we've talked about this, is for your lawn signs, don't focus just on ownership. This is a place where you want to build general awareness, because I once worked with a startup co-op, and this was such an aha moment for me, where after we opened, we were battling, as all co-ops do, the myth that if you aren't an owner, you can't shop at the co-op. And it's not an uncommon misperception, but we had somebody, our lawn signs said proud member owner. They'd been out for a couple years, and somebody came in and we were talking to them about this misconception, and they said, well, all the lawn signs all over town say proud member owner. Of course, people think that they can't shop at the co-op if they're not a member owner. And it was such a light bulb moment for us. And there are many ways to get your messaging out without focusing on ownership. You just want them to learn about you. If they see your lawn sign, just send them to your website, say something, great food is coming. I mean, it could be anything to kind of pique their interest, and then they'll learn how it all works. The lawn sign isn't where you're making the sale. The lawn sign is where you're spreading awareness. All right, direct mail is another one that I love. You might have noticed it has some like Tinkerbell sparkles around it. And right here, actually, we have a direct mail piece that Sola Co-op in LA sent out last year in 2020. And direct mail I love because, like social media and an email newsletter, it just slides right into their life. It comes into their home physically. And again, direct mail, sorry, is like a postcard or a printed piece that comes in through the mail. And it just works. It is proven to be one of the most effective ways to sell anything. It's why when it's the political season, you're getting hammered with postcards because they're in your house, they're on your counter. You can't help but look at them. So a hot tip for direct mail is, it sounds like a really expensive project, and it is an investment. There's not a way around that. But Every Door Direct Mail is a program from the United States Postal Service, and they make it affordable to send out mass mailings by geographic area. You go in, you choose these different areas, and you get to send to them for, gosh, I want to say it's like 17 cents or something, as opposed to mailing at your normal postcard stamp at this point. It's about half. So it's really affordable postage. And there are lots of printers who, because of this program, they have sort of this whole setup and they offer affordable printing options to get this out. Again, this is in the build awareness area, and you can kind of send it out, let people know who you are, what you're doing. Maybe you want to promote something specific, or maybe you just want to say like, hey, this is what we're up to, check us out online. So that's one thing you'd always want to include in any direct mail communication, is a call to action of some sort, which is probably going to your website. And so you want your website to be ready for them when they arrive there.
Fantastic. Okay, so now that we've done your favorite, direct mail,
Yeah.
I think we should circle. I think we should circle back and do a little bit deeper dive on some of the other ones that we talked about. Social media.
Social media, thank you. Social media ad campaigns are super cheap, and and they're a great way to connect with people, because even though we all got Zoom fatigue, and even though we've been stuck with our internet and not a lot else for the better part of, or well, over a year at this point, your audience is still online. The majority of us are on the internet for several hours every day, and a lot of that time is spent on social media. So if you invest a small amount in social media ads, you could see very wide reaching exposure to your audience. There are a lot of different types of social media ads. Facebook ads, for example, let's use them as an example. I mean, there are, I think, over half a dozen different ways that you can do it. And some are really slick, some are pretty simple. I would recommend that if you're going to go this route, Google it. And there are some really good overviews of what's available and what's most appropriate depending on your goals. That's something that we could potentially help someone with as well. But you can also, if you just want to volunteer to kind of go after it, there are some pretty solid resources out there as far as social media ads. And what you want to think about is two things. One is what you want to accomplish, and two is what you can do well. That's super important, because if you can just do something halfway, or you don't really have anyone on your team who has the design skills, or whatever the thing is, it's worse for you to put out a subpar ad and pay to have it spread all over the internet than it would be to not do it, right? Not do something that's outside your skill set as an organization.
Great. We hinted at this earlier. People are starting to go outside, like out back into the world, squinting at the glowing orb and all of that. So what does in-person stuff look like?
So we're going to talk about a couple things. Farmers markets being number one, because they are wide open. There are still a few that I think out there I've seen are not functional, but farmers markets, they more or less stayed open last year, but they were very restricted. They weren't accepting folks for informational things the way that we sort of filled that role as startups in the past. This year, we expect that they will be a lot more open. So that's something to look into right now. And they're all about to open up. So the timing is great. So if you haven't already looked at your local farmers market, write it down now, open another tab, and find them, figure out who you need to get in touch with. And farmers markets are a great option for co-ops for several reasons. One is because of the Venn diagram. There's a lot of crossover between the people that you are looking for to join the co-op and people who are going to go out of their way to go somewhere that's not the grocery store to buy farm fresh food. There's just huge element there where you can just grab up people who are like-minded. Also, farmers markets saw an enormous surge in popularity last year. So we all know that there was sort of this big wave of interest in saving and supporting local businesses. And that was something that farms and farm stands and markets saw. And so they were busy and it was great. And hopefully that will continue this year. There will be folks that would drop off, but there will probably be plenty of new people who keep their farmers market habit, and you can be there for them to tell them why maybe in the future in December when the market's closed, you could be their option. It's also a great place to meet potential collaborators. So that's another thing, is that whole momentum piece where when you're involved with like-minded folks, you might meet some of those people there who are also vendors, or you never know, customers as well. Oh, wait, I have another thing about the farmers markets, which is that if you can run an activity or somehow get people to hang out, that's a good thing. Here, these young folks in this photo, they are shish kebabbing pre-pandemic, of course, because they're missing their masks. They got in on this activity and their parents are just hanging around waiting for them. Well, wouldn't it be neat if they had something to read or a friendly face to talk to? So you can sort of fill that hole. I believe Long Beach was doing that as well. They were doing different activities at the farmers market, Long Beach Co-op, I should say, and gives the kids an opportunity to do something, and then the parents have idle hands and they can learn about the co-op.
Great. So speaking about learning about the co-op, we can also do specific education events.
This is a pretty simple one, which is just take the weather while you can get it. Again, we talked about how it's been a roller coaster, right? So we know that things might change again in the future. Feels like we're headed in the right direction towards normalcy. But for the moment, we have good weather approaching for most of the country, for all the country. Some people already have it, right? But and the idea now is to go ahead, do something outdoors, do something fun and interesting. Education has historically been a strong way for co-ops to attract people to learn about something they're interested in and that is somehow connected to the mission of the co-op. You can kind of bring that back into your repertoire. And then if you have a site, that won't be most people, but some of you have a site that your store is going to be going to, and you should be using it. So you should be there regularly doing something. It doesn't need to be fancy. It could literally be just like hanging out on the sidewalk, letting people know when they're walking by and showing folks, hey, this is where the co-op's going to be. This is what the co-op's about. That's a key one, is if you have a site, get out there in person, show your eyes, not your whole face, and and be visible.
Okay, so if we're going outside, let's remember, still wear masks, as the CDC gives us advice to. So it sounds like they're starting to loosen that a little bit, but if we're going to be in close quarters outside, probably still best to wear masks. Convey momentum.
Some of you may remember the co-op legend, Bill Gesner. He is a legend, truly. He was like co-op guru of all the co-op gurus, and he passed away 2 years ago, I believe. And he just knew everything. Everything. I mean, you asked him any questions and he had an answer that was really good. And I picked this up from Bill at one point when I was working with him years ago. If you look like you're making progress, you will make progress. If you just showcase that you're moving forward, people will be attracted to that. And it will make people feel like they're missing out. So if it's like, oh, Joel and I went out and we had so much fun, then whoever's looking and seeing like, oh, well, geez, on Facebook, Joel and Heather look like they're having so much fun. Like maybe I could go to that thing or that place or whatever and do that. It will grow your ownership. That doesn't mean you're fluffing. That doesn't mean you're lying, misrepresenting what you're doing. It means that you are showcasing every win and you are showing people, hey, we're moving forward and this is what it's going to look like. Come be a part of it.
Yeah. FOMO is real. FOMO, fear of missing out. That's a real thing. And everyone wants to be where the cool kids are and where the fun stuff's happening. So definitely use that angle. And speaking of fun, our next point, be fun, interesting, or beneficial to your audience.
I think the little subtext there is almost the most important part, which is just co-op is not enough to lure us out of the house. Honestly, I feel that this was always the cardinal rule. A startup co-op is not, I'm going to say something, it might be kind of controversial, is not inherently interesting enough to say, I'm going to leave my home, my yard, my whatever, right? And I'm going to go and get a pamphlet or go hand over some money to receive benefits that most of which I won't receive for a time into the future. And that is why I've always sort of been a huge proponent of, hey, team up with someone else, do something that is already interesting to folks in some way. And then the co-op's like an awesome sidebar. It's like, oh my gosh, I went out, who was it? Kennett Square, if you're out there, shout out. They did a really cool thing last year. They brewed beer with their local brewery. And I think there was like a local honey or something that was in it. And then they had planned this event, which unfortunately I think was maybe got eaten by the pandemic. But they planned this event where they're going to launch this beer. They're working with a group that already has a following. They are doing something that people seem to be fond of, which is drinking beer.
I hear that's getting popular, yes.
Yeah. And so there was a benefit for folks before the co-op was even on the table. And I can't recommend that strongly enough. And especially because we are more hermited than ever, right? It is harder than ever before to get me out my door, right? To leave sort of what I'm doing. And so we got to step it up and be interesting and be collaborative to make it worth people's while to come out and learn about us.
Right. So some folks have realized over the last year that, oh, doing things with other people is kind of overrated. So some folks are, you know what? I'm fine hanging out at home. Shout out to the introverts. So a lot of folks are just like, yeah. Now some of us extroverts, we're like, woo, we get to go outside again. We get to intermingle again. But there are some folks who, like Heather said, are going to be more hermited than ever and are going to need a little more boost and draw. What Heather was saying about the co-op not being enough. Now, if you're watching this, then the co-op was enough for you. You've got your core that you just have to whisper co-op and you're going to have a dozen people be like, what? And they're all in, ready to go. Great. You probably already have those folks on board. So now you need to start thinking about, okay, who else who's not all in at the first word? How do we make this interesting to that broader group? What's the lure going to be for folks who are happy indoors or who are like, yay, we get to go outside. I've got 99 things on my list that I've written over the last year of things I want to do. How are we going to get our co-op onto that list?
I love that, Joel.
So now we're going to start doing stuff and we're going to need pictures of it.
Oh my gosh.
Pictures or it didn't happen, right?
Right. It's that whole thing. Like if a tree falls and we didn't put it on Facebook, did the tree even fall? Yeah. And that's really where we are with it is maybe it's a sad statement, but it is our reality, right? Your events, you can only see so many people in person in any one place at one time. So your event in the world we live in now is not just about your event. It's actually less about your event than it is about the pictures that you can post from the event. Because the likelihood is more people are going to see those pictures than are going to actually see you in person doing the thing. And this also can be used for online things if there's an occasion where you're doing Zoom things, which may not be as much of a thing as we move forward here, but you've seen folks, and I'm sure, take the screenshots and they post and they say, hey, this is what we're up to. A visual is the most interesting thing you can offer people. So do not miss any opportunities to take pictures of your co-op doing things. Any things, right?
Right.
And of course, you want them to be beautiful, you want them to be attractive, but don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, because if you have visuals and they are new, it'll hook them just a little bit more. You might find one more person who hasn't heard of you yet.
Right. And again, it'll tap into that. We had so much fun. You want to be here
Right.
next time energy. So I would recommend being sure you have one or two people in your group at the event who you know love to take tons of pictures. Maybe they're introverts and they're like, if I take pictures and I'm not talking to people, sweet. But find someone who is willing to do that, because I've been at events and we've left and did anyone get any pictures? Oh no, we were all too busy talking to everybody. So be sure that you don't take a chance on it, that you've got someone locked in to take your pictures for you, to be sure that you're capturing that. So you can share those out, get everyone interested in that next event. All right, so let's recap our goals. What? More owners. Yes, yes, yes. Now, part of that is going to be when you get more owners, as we look at the long range goal, those owners are all buying in with a share. And so we're also starting to build our little tiny bit of money that we're going to start using for important things down the road. But we're getting those owners on board. And it's not just about building the numbers and about building the money there. It's really about getting people who are invested in the success of the co-op, because those are the folks who are going to shop. Because you can get people who will be like, fine, I'll become an owner, but if they're not going to shop, that's the folks you need. You need the folks who are really all in on, this is going to be my co-op and I'm going to help support it. And how do we do that? We do those twin tracks of building awareness about who we are, why we're awesome, why it's going to be great for our community to have co-op, and building the connections with the other folks, whether it's grassroots, every person, our neighbors, all of that, to some of the movers and shakers in the community, some of the organizations that have a broad reach, that make things happen, that are already known in the community as bringing a positive influence, pairing up with them.
Nailed it. This is the filter. This is how, when you're looking at your options, when you're thinking about your strategy, use these things as your filter. Are we accomplishing one or more of these things by partaking in this activity or working on this initiative?
Right. And speaking of strategy, plan for now, think like your audience, cover your basics, meet folks where they are, get outside, entice them to join you.
You can do it. It's going to be fun. Think about what's fun for you and make it fun for other folks and give them a good reason to get out and talk with you.
I would just harken back to one of the first things you said. Do it. There's not going to be a perfect time to do it. You'll never be fully planned. So plan enough, take the plunge, do it. Start doing things, see what works, do more of that.
It's going to be great.
Yeah. When you start get out and doing stuff, let us know. Keep us in the loop. And that'll be one of the people that you're reaching out to build that momentum that we were talking about and to keep things going. So thank you so much for coming today. And one last reminder that starting soon, you can take a little break, hydrate. You want to stay hydrated, folks. And and next up, Heather will be back with building a detailed plan for owner growth. Once again, thanks for coming to Up and Coming. We hoped that we would all be in a room together doing this, but I'm really hopeful that next year we actually will be. And thanks for joining us on Zoom today.
Thank you. Enjoy.